Are you guys able to hear me? I'm trying to figure out, I planned this like pretty good live stream.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see, share. I don't know why the audio wasn't working earlier. Okay. Let's see.
Is it working? Okay. Let's see.
Can you hear me? Oh, I guess I was checking on my phone. Okay, cool. So, thanks, Kelly. Okay, I guess I have to show my face. I was trying not to show my face because I didn't want to show my face today, but it's okay. I guess the audio only works if I show my face, which is super annoying, but that's okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to redo this live because when I did it earlier, the sound didn't work at all, and I was just talking to myself the whole time, but it's okay. Okay, so I made this presentation just to really clear up what threshold means because it's something I talk a lot about in training, and it's really hard to train when your dog is over their threshold. So a lot of people will be like, oh, this doesn't work for my dog. They're not listening or they're not taking treats. And that's because your dog is over threshold, right? So I am going to kind of walk through what that means. And just in case you don't know, I'm Lisa. I'm a certified professional dog trainer. I'm just including this just in case you don't know. But most likely, if you're watching this on YouTube or my Facebook group, you probably do know, but there I am. All right. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about what threshold is and why it is super, super important to really understand what stage of threshold that your dog or puppy is at. And so I start off with a really simple definition here. So this is a kind of general definition, but the moment your dog or puppy crosses over from one emotional state to another. And what I mean by that is they are unable to learn at a certain point, right? And this happens with humans too, where maybe you're giving a presentation like this and someone will tell you like, this is how you don't act nervous. You make sure you're grounded, make sure that, like if you're giving a TED talk or a presentation to a lot of people, imagine them naked or whatever. There's all these different techniques. But once you are over a certain threshold, so if you have really bad panic attacks or things like that, like even if you know that information, there's no learning happening at that point because your brain has crossed over. Some people call it like your reptilian brain, where you're just in fight or flight. You are just freaking out and you just need to leave the situation, right? Or you just need to like get some alone time. Same with our dogs. So once they are over threshold, then there is no learning happening. So that's probably why when you ask your dog to do something, they're just so focused on that trigger or they're overwhelmed with everything happening that there's absolutely no learning happening. So no matter what you do, they're over threshold. So we need to get them out of threshold. And so I put together kind of these different levels so that you can see examples, right? So the green level is when your dog is completely under threshold, they're relaxed. If they're outside, maybe they're sniffing, their head is down, they're exploring, they have soft eyes. Their tail might be moving, but it's more relaxed, or maybe they have a neutral tail. And this picture is a dog that is in the green zone. So looks very relaxed, very content. And this is kind of the place where you want your dog to learn new things. So if I'm teaching my dog a brand new skill, I want to make sure they're in that green zone because it'll make it the easiest for them to take in and learn that information. Next one is the blue zone. So the dog can probably still learn in this situation, but it's going to be a little bit harder. Definitely can probably still do skills that they already know. So you can see in this picture, and this picture is a little bit hard to tell, but the dog is probably alert, but still very relaxed. And I should say puppy because that's a little puppy. But I could imagine a blue zone like maybe a toddler in the family just walked in the room and they were sleeping, made a noise. They look up and they're like, oh, that's my sister. and they kind of just like look to see what they're doing. So their heart rate may have slightly elevated, but they're still generally relaxed, loose, and, even though we're training brand new skills when they're in the green zone, I mean that the environment is a green zone, but when you whip out that treat, then they might cross over into the blue zone, right? But the environment isn't causing the blue zone. Your treat and the training, they're more alert, right? So that's kind of the difference of where we want to start training. And so let's talk about leash reactivity. So if your dog is super reactive with other dogs, when they're really close, but the dog is far enough away where they're more in this blue zone, where they're kind of just looking, their eyebrows kind of wrinkle a little bit and they're very focused. This is where I would maybe, depending on how well you know your dog, maybe wait for them to disengage on their own and then click and reward that so that you start to increase that rate where they check in with you. Now, the yellow level is where they are a little bit more engaged. So I would say this little puppy here is probably more in the yellow zone. We're outside. I took this picture, so there was actually like another dog, so I know what was in the picture. So this little guy was looking at another dog, and he's starting to get a little stiff, but he can totally disengage if I told him to disengage. So if I said, watch me, and then I kind of walked away from the trigger, he would have been able to do that. But you can see this is where you really want to kind of step in, right? I'm not waiting for him to disengage on his own. I'm going to say watch or his name or maybe like a little kissy noise to distract him and disengage him from that trigger. And they're still going to eat in this stage too. Maybe they'll only take higher value treats, but they will still eat in this zone. So the next one is the orange level. And so this is a picture of a dog in the orange level. So this is when you want to either cue your dog to look away or you take a treat in your hand and kind of lure them away and try to create a lot of distance away from that trigger. So in this one, you can see that his ears are back. He's not stress panting, but his mouth is very closed and tight. You can see hard eyes, leaning towards or away from the trigger. So in this case, he doesn't like the trigger, which is this puppy. In this moment, he does like her normally, but just in this moment, she's barking in his face. And so he's leaning away. Only high value treats may work at this point, depending on your dog. He's very treat motivated, so he probably would take lower value treats. And then if they're very excited, they may whine, or also a stress yawn is common in this level. So this is where I stepped in and, lured him away and got the puppy out of his face because we want to step in at that point. And you can see the puppy here is also pretty much in the orange zone because ears are pinned back. But she's more in the stress zone or not stress, but orange zone of wanting to hang out. And she's getting stressed because he won't play. He's in the orange zone because he doesn't want to play. And then the red zone is what we want to stay out of as much as possible. So at this point, they are lunging, growling, maybe showing teeth, they're barking. And I took this picture as well, so I know what's happening. This is a dog run in this apartment complex. And on the other side, there were construction workers. So he was not very happy about that. So we left the dog area as soon as that happened. But the dog is stiff. The tail may be wagging high. So in this situation, his tail was wagging. Pacing and in distress. So he wasn't pacing, but that could happen with a dog. And they're in their flight or fight part of the brain, meaning no learning is occurring. And they may not even take high value treats at this point. And if they do take high value treats, it's very stressful eating, right? They're like stuffing it in their face and then they're back to looking and barking. So either way, it's a very stressful situation for them. And so what I like to say in this zone is that you just want to create as much distance as you can away from the trigger and then test recovery time. So see how long it takes for your dog to recover. When we're working with any behavior modification, we just want to make sure that they are not rehearsing the behavior as much as possible. So we want to stay away from the red zone as much as possible. Meaning if you know that your dog gets upset with a dog 1 foot away, then cross the street, right? The more they rehearse the behavior, the harder it is to train. This is what I was going to say is that we don't always know what's going to happen. So we're human. That's the other side of this is we're human. I was at this dog run with this dog and all of a sudden these construction workers like came out of nowhere. So there are going to be times that your dog may get in the red zone unintentionally, right? And so in those situations, you just have to do the best you can. So, creating more distance and then testing that recovery time. So asking for a touch or a look at me. And then just so you know, you kind of probably figured this out from this, but the way you keep your dog under threshold is through distance. So how far away the trigger is, distraction. So are there other distractions that are causing trigger stacking? So an example of this is if your dog is kind of whatever about construction workers, but doesn't like dogs, but there's a construction worker walking around, there's a dog across the street, and then now another dog pops out of the gate next to them, that might set them off, right? So just keep that in mind that there's something called trigger stacking. It happens with humans too, right? So let's say I had my door open, like my backyard door open or whatever. And, I was letting the cool breeze come in, but all of a sudden it gets windy and it slams the door shut. I might think like, oh, that's kind of annoying. I guess it's windy. But let's say it was at night and I just watched Annabelle and I was already scared. And then that happened and the door shut. I would be like, oh my God, Annabelle's real. She just closed the door. My house is haunted. So, and then you would start freaking out more, right? So that's what I mean by distraction. So trigger stacking. And then of course, intensity. So the intensity of that trigger. If your dog is leash reactive, going back to that example, is a dog just walking by like across the street? Maybe your dog is fine with that. But if the other dog starts barking, then maybe that sets your dog off. If your dog doesn't like strangers at the door, maybe you've worked them up to a point where they're okay with a person walking by or a person dropping off mail. But if a person drops off mail, drops the box on their toe and screams a curse word, that sets your dog off, right? So that would be intensity. And then I didn't include duration on here, but duration, it just really depends on the dog. So some dogs might habituate if you're outside with them for an hour and they might get used to the situation and then they're less reactive. Other dogs, duration might be worse for them and they might need to work in smaller sessions and they just might get mentally exhausted and then being outside for an hour would actually make it worse. So you kind of have to get to know your own dog. Okay, so I already said that. So it's important to break down behavior systematically and have a plan. So depending on what your situation is, you just want to break it down. So for example, if it's loose, let's say it's a person at the door, rather than just waiting for people to come to your door, maybe you first desensitize them to a light knock, and then maybe you desensitize them to a harder knock on the door. Then maybe you have a familiar person come into the house and then give them treats, and then you work all the way up to, a stranger knocking on the door. If you're working with leash reactivity, then no, today I'm going to work with dogs that are across the street. And of course, you can't really make people be there, but like at 3 p.m., there's usually people walking and I'll walk on whatever side the dog isn't on and we'll work on engage, disengage game. So having that plan will really help because then when you're feeling tired and you're like, oh, that dog is crossing the street on my side, my feet hurt, I'm just going to stay here and see how my dog does. And then your dog barks. Well, now they've rehearsed that behavior versus if you have a plan set out and you know what your dog's threshold is, you're going to be focused more on, okay, I need to cross the street versus my feet hurt and I'm being lazy right now and I don't want to cross the street. Okay. So let me know if that makes sense. If you have any questions, you can type them in the comments below. I just want to see. Okay, so I have to go to a different screen to see the question. So I was just looking. Hi, Kelly. So your daughter's Chihuahua stays in the red zone. He picks fights with my puppy. So something you can do with that is create a barrier. So maybe you practice outside, not at home first, and then you would have to have a helper. So have a helper far away and then do kind of an engage disengage game with your daughter's Chihuahua or sorry, you would do it with the Chihuahua with the puppy across the street. And then start to work on really like holding the Chihuahua while confining the puppy in the house, giving your Chihuahua lots of treats. So they know that you're kind of there to help with the situation and help create that new emotional response. So showing them that they get treats, they get pets, and you're going to help keep the puppy away. Because what happens a lot, and I'm not saying this is what happens with you, but when people bring home a new puppy, they kind of just let the puppy bug the older dog, and then the older dog starts to learn that they have to kind of defend themselves. So I would just try to like separate them for now and then really help your Chihuahua like understand that it's safe. You're there to support them. So if the puppy bugs them, you'll pick them up, things like that. So just like I showed in that other picture here, with the older dog and the puppy. So he didn't snap because he knows that when this happens, like I'll redirect the puppy away. So that's why he's also kind of more looking at me because he's like, hello, can you redirect the puppy away? But yeah. Okay. And then I do just want to mention, so I always offer one-on-one virtual consults too. But right now I'm offering $10 off. So you can use code training10. You can book it at this website. Well, it's just a short link for the actual website, but it's bit.ly/book pup training. You do have to use caps here. Caps matter. Also included in the description once I'm done with this live. And then what's included in that? It's a 60-minute session. But first, what you'll do is submit a detailed form about your pup and the issues you're having. And then you'll submit a quick video of your pup doing the behavior that you don't like. So a video really helps because a lot of times we like to put labels on things like, oh, my dog is really stubborn. But when we really dig down into it, what does stubborn mean? Like, does it mean they're not redirecting when you're walking? Does it mean that they're too anxious so they're not listening? So it really helps video because the video shows what's actually happening and we can put kind of like these human labels or how we're feeling. So that's why the video really helps. And the next thing I would do from there is write up a custom 3-week training plan for you that's systematically kind of laid out. So you have steps to work through. And then during our actual Zoom call, we'll review kind of the basics, training mechanics, clicker timing. And we don't realize how much training mechanics plays into dog training. I can't tell you how many people repeat the cue multiple times, right? Like sit, 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 where it becomes background noise to your dog. So we want to say the cue one time. And even though I tell you that, you probably will still do it because it's human nature to want to say things multiple times. So it's almost like training the people, right? I had to train myself because I used to do that before I was a dog trainer as well. And then clicker timing. So timing is so, so important. It's going to speed up your training. And then of course your body language. So a lot of times people don't realize that they have their hands in their pockets the entire time during an actual training session. So then when they go outside to use the new cues that their dog knows, they no longer have their hand in their pocket. So dogs are very good at reading body language. So in their head, they're like, okay, when we train, it's because my human has their left hand in their treat pouch and they're leaned forward, really excited to, to train. And this is when I'm really focused because I know I'm getting treats and I know this is our training time. So the key to that is really acting natural when you're training. So don't have your hand in your treat pouch. Act as if you're going to act when you're actually planning on using the new behavior that you taught them. And of course, saying the cue one time clearly versus repeating it multiple times. So there's a lot of different things to really take into account where the virtual can help. But I also do have my online course as well, which some of you guys are in, where you can submit videos on there too. But as far as like the one-on-one, that is more for if you're really looking for custom help and you want kind of that feedback, like in person specific to your dog. But regardless of whether you do one-on-one, online course, hire a trainer in your area, I think this will be really, really helpful for you to really have a strong understanding of these different levels of threshold because, like I said, once they're in the red zone or in the orange zone, if they haven't had that reinforcement history, they're not going to listen. Like the only reason why Ziggy listens to me in this orange zone is because we've practiced a lot in that orange zone. Well, not a lot, but like whenever he's been in the orange zone, I've kind of like redirected. So he knows I'm going to do something is what I'm trying to say. But what I am not trying to say is you shouldn't try to practice or keep them in an orange zone. This is like, it happens on accident, if that makes sense. Like we're trying to manage the situation so we don't get in the orange or the red zone with the caveat that we are human and these things will sometimes happen. All right. Well, thanks, Kelly, for watching. Thank you, everyone that is on the live. And thank you to those who were on the last live that had no sound and let me know. But yeah, all right. That's it for today, everyone. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.